I have Chad Cleveland next, and he's going to talk about some of the technology that he uses to do sustainable practices. The thing I wanted to, and Chad is also a custom alfalfa and other hay farmer, and the thing I want to preface with Chad and with Paul is remember we went through very quickly one of the principles of sustainability, and it's used different, it depends on the context, whether it's mining or fishing or ag, but is the appropriate use of technology, right? Because technology is what we've come up with as a solution to manage things better. But it can be used inappropriately, right? And sometimes it's used to overharvest and can damage the ecosystem and the social structure more than we need to. So I just want to put that in context. In ag, in food production, it's really hard because we've got 8 billion people and they need to be fed, and everybody knows that there's organic farming out there, there's sustainable farming out there, but the thing you guys are going to have to balance with how we manage the water, how we use genetically modified seeds. We will be talking about that tomorrow. What has to be balanced in there is it still has to be intensive. We still have to produce enough food, right? There's not a place in the world that we're going to say, okay, well, you know, we decided not to use GM seeds anymore, but your kids are going to starve, okay? So that doesn't happen that much in this country, but we have to look at that in the context. So it's sustainable practice. We have to balance these things, and there are some trade-offs. So we're going to discuss, you know, one of the most controversial things of all would be GM seeds, genetically modified organisms. And you're going to hear that that's always bad. From some groups, you're going to hear that's always bad no matter the circumstances. We're going to have a really cool, balanced discussion about that tomorrow, so you get an idea that, you know, you make the decision, but maybe there is places that and times that it should be used. And same thing with technology. It can be used to really make us better managers and better conservationists and produce the food we need. So that's kind of, I gave Chad kind of called, and he has not lectured here with us before, but we went to a presentation at his farm a few years ago, and he's a guy that uses a lot of technology in his operation. So I gave him the daunting task of talking about it in the sustainable context. So over to Chad, and thanks for coming.
Good afternoon. My name is Chad Cleveland. Wear a few different hats. I actually went to school at Cal Poly Pomona, majored in agronomy and ag bio, and I still manage a farm for them. I farm down in Chino. I have a custom harvesting and feeding operation, work with the local dairies in Chino. And then out in Newberry Springs, outside of Barstow, I have a hay ranch out there as well. So I also do some consulting and a little bit of everything related to agriculture. And I occasionally lecture at Cal Poly, and this is a presentation that kind of plugged from there. So it's meant to be kind of a 2-hour in-depth deal. Kind of skim through it. A lot of this stuff is kind of in-depth, a little bit beyond probably what you guys need to know right now. So if I use any terms you don't quite understand, please feel free to ask questions along the way, and we'll just kind of go from there. But some of this I'll briefly kind of touch on. You know, as with any technology, it's constantly changing, and I mean, this was from last year, and just, you know, how technology advances in a year, so things have already changed, and there's even more stuff out there. But we'll just kind of touch the basics, and please ask questions as we go, and it's related to farming, technology, anything. This more touches on the actual kind of computer hardware side of technology, not necessarily you know, the breeding side is a whole other side of technology, the genetically modified seeds and chemicals and all that. There's all kinds of advancements and pros and cons of that, which feel free to ask questions if you do, but this is kind of touching the surface of the technology that's out there to help manage an operation, whether you're a farmer, a consultant, you work on the environmental side, whatever it may be, you know, having data helps you manage things if you can use it the way to benefit you. So. Again, it's all about, with any technology, about being connected. So, you know, via the internet, you can be connected, you know, basically anywhere and everywhere you are. So whether you're in field, out in a tractor, in your office, you can be connected. So of course this precision technology, it allows farmers to track large amounts of agronomic data, which would be, how your plant's actually doing, the water usage, pest issues, your yield. And when I say yield, that's the term we use for how much crop we're harvesting. So like tons of hay is our yield per acre. Environmental issues, whether it be weather, the wind, the rain, soil moisture, weather's everything in farming. And then equipment data. You can track everything from your equipment, from where it is to tell it to drive in a perfectly straight row, and aid your operators in doing the best job they can and collecting data at the same time. So properly utilizing these tools allow for more efficient, profitable, and you guys are concerned about sustainable operations. And of course, for a sustainable operation to work, it needs to be profitable and efficient, and not wasting precious resources, all while maximizing our yield potential. So of course, data, you can have all the numbers and data in the world, but if you can't do something with it, it's useless to you. So that's one issue. Yeah, there's technology. There's so many ways to gather data and so many ways to apply technology. At times, it can be wasteful. You can't even put it to use. I'm sure a lot of you have phones and you have tons of apps that never get used or maybe don't do you any good. So you have to make sure it's something that's helping your operation one way or another. But there's software out there that helps organize all this data to useful information. Many of the important management decisions Paul kind of briefly touched on is, seed selection. When you want to plant alfalfa, you just don't go down to the store and buy a bag of alfalfa seed. There's hundreds of different varieties that different companies, different breeders have worked on for years and years and years with technology and traditional breeding techniques to make that perfect plant for your area. So people might think there's just one alfalfa seed. There's not. There's alfalfa seed that does better on salty ground, better in hotter environments, better in colder environments. If you're trying to get high quality hay, or if you're feeding it to cows, there's pest resistance. There's all that out there. And so when you look at a ready to buy seed, there's hundreds of choices. So knowing your soil, your weather, your yield, and what you're trying to do can help make those selections. Again, fertility management, the same thing. There's hundreds of different fertilizers out there, but you need to know what your plant needs, so you're applying the proper fertilizer at the proper weight. If you're applying at the improper weight, if you're applying over, you're going to be having excess, which again can cause environmental issues and runoff and pollution. If you're under applying, your crop's not getting all the nutrients it needs, and you're not going to be getting your full yield potential. Employee management, knowing where your employees are, and then being able to communicate with you. In-season crop management, as you're watching the crop grow, making record keeping, using weather statistics, and pest management. That can also be monitoring your pests, using integrated pest management. I don't know if that's a term you guys have heard yet, but IPM, it's a way of monitoring your populations, not just going in there and spraying a chemical if you see one aphid, one bug. It's all about using all the tools you have, watching weather patterns, field history, selecting the proper plants, proper nutrition to avoid spraying chemicals when you have to, and knowing that threshold when you absolutely have to spray rather than just throwing all the chemicals you can at it. And then of course budgeting. None of this works if you can't make money at it, or know how to budget that money to invest in your next crop. We'll just quick go through some of this. Let's see. This is kind of what we just quick went over. Some of this I'm going to skip through, and we'll come back to some of the pictures. Let's see. Let's go and. So one of the big benefits, and this only applies to some crops have this technology. Eventually, there'll be in all different types of crops, but yield maps are a really important aspect to precision agriculture. Basically, as you're harvesting a crop via GPS and certain software and scales and whatnot, it's weighing what you're harvesting off the field. And then by knowing where you are, it can now generate these maps, and usually they're color-coded, showing where your high-yielding areas were, your low-yielding areas were, and now you can go and pinpoint those and apply amendments to the soil, or whether it's irrigation, or see what's going on to maximize those low areas. Whereas, in the old days, a lot of crops, if you had low yield, you just put, say, 100 pounds of nitrogen on the entire field, now you can go in and pinpoint those areas and only apply nitrogen where and when you need it. And this is also applicable for irrigation as well. Let's see. And another important aspect of this is telemetry, meaning you can now control things remotely via cellular technology. So like for instance, I have my center pivot, my pumps. I can go on my cell phone and turn them on or off. I can speed them up, slow them down, communicate to them. It'll send me a text message. If it gets a flat tire or a gearbox goes off and it stops, it'll send me a text message and say, hey, the pivot's down, you need to go fix it. It'll tell me if the pump goes off, if the water pressure is low, all at the tips of your fingers. So that's a really neat technology nowadays, is you can basically manage everything remotely, but you still have to get out in the field and check things. But it definitely aids in that in the management side of it. Again, this is a picture like on the pointer here on the right there, field command. That's apparatus that have on my pivots that it has a little cell antenna on it, sending a signal to satellite. That's what's communicating with my phone. I can communicate with the center pivot irrigation system. And then another way I use the wireless agriculture is through sensors in the field. I also have moisture sensors that are buried in the ground in the alfalfa fields, and we'll see in a minute. I can access those remotely to see how much water is in the profile at various depths of the alfalfa root zone. So I can know if alfalfa needs water, if I'm over applying, where I'm at, and help make those management decisions. And another reason I'm kind of proactive in this, and I try and use this a lot, is I'm all over the place. I have a ranch, at Newberry Springs, down in Chino, 100 miles away, and I can't be everywhere at once. So being able to log on a computer or go on my phone and see what's going on elsewhere helps me manage all these areas. Aside from good health, really couldn't do it with good health, but this helps me kind of monitor things a little bit easier. And then again, with the wireless technology, you can monitor and adjust your irrigation, your fertilizer, and pesticides, all that, which all helps you be more sustainable and maximize your profits by only using what you need to use. Again, we kind of talked about the mapping. That's kind of hard to see. You can, like on your bottom left there, that's a field. You can see the different colors. So say I don't know if this not particularly, but the green could be a high yielding area, and then the brown, or I guess the brown areas could be a low yielding area. So that would be an issue where you could come back and treat just those areas with, if it's a fertilizer, if it's a water issue, if it's a pest issue, you can go treat those issues. But then you have to have another set of equipment to then apply this selectively. On the mapping, here's kind of another picture. You can really see how it'll show you different patterns. You can also map your question.
Do you use the GIS system with this?
Yeah, it's all basic GIS, GPS, GPS knowing where you are in the field, and there's different software applications for mapping this. You can also go and map just the soils. There's different apparatuses you can drag through a field that measures, we won't get into detail how it all works, but it'll measure your soil textures until you create a map of your soils. So you'll have a map similar to that showing where your sandy soil is, your heavy soil, your clay soil, and then you can make prescriptions to treat just those particular areas. We kind of touched the yield monitors. We discussed already. Environmental data is extremely important. You can only do so much, but Mother Nature is out of your hands, and it controls most of what you're doing. So the whole idea is to do whatever you can to make that perfect environment, treat that plant right, but still you're relying on Mother Nature. So being able to get that real-time data, whether it's the temperature, wind speed, forecast, humidities, leaf wetness, and soil moisture, all that helps you make better management decisions and try and avoid issues the best you can. Certain pests thrive in certain weathers. You could count, it's called degree days. How many days above a certain temperature you've had will tell you, hey, that's the perfect environment for a cutworm or whatever it may be. When to start scouting and looking for those particular insects. And again, record keeping for the previous year, knowing when they came in last year, what time, what the weather was like, what cutting, and all that. And again, having all this info and data helps you be a better farmer, and profitable farmer, which in turn makes you sustainable. You can use your resources, conserve them, use them just where you need them. You're not wasting, and applying it to maximize your crop. And then environmental data like the wind helps with pesticide drift and inversion layers and all that kind of stuff. And alerts. You can set alerts. Like on my weather station, I can have it send me alert if I want to know if the wind gets above 20 miles an hour, or we use it for baling. As Paul kind of mentioned, you want a certain amount of moisture when you're baling these bales to get a nice soft bale that retains the leaves. But up here in the desert, it's usually dry, bone dry. Well, I have a barometer which measures humidity. So in the morning, we get up and bale at 3, 4, 5 in the morning to take advantage of the cooler weather. We can set an alert to where, hey, if we got moisture of humidity above 50%, hey, it's time to get out there and bale. So my foreman can set an alert. Hey, they'll send him a text message, wake him up, we'll get the crew up and get out there and bale. So that's another neat tool. Or if it's windy, we'll get up. If it's windy, blowing 20 miles an hour, we're not going to bale, or vice versa. Or if we're planning to spray or something. So sensors, this is kind of a picture of the moisture, like that's a moisture sensor out in the field of, might be cotton or something. Oops. And so basically that's a probe down in the ground. There's a little solar panel and a cell signal that's sending that data up and back. And then you can generate, it'll generate graphs, and I'll show you again my probes. We'll look at it real time, see what my probes are actually doing right now. Another tool is real-time harvest data, where you can actually, as you're harvesting, you can get all the nutrient, gather the nutrient info, basically the quality of that product you're harvesting. All the hay and corn and all that, it comes down to quality. If it doesn't meet a certain number of protein or whatnot, it degrades in value, especially when you're feeding dairy animals who need the best nutrition they can. So its price and its value is based on its protein content and some other factors as well. So now there's even tools to where as you're harvesting, it's telling you the quality of that feed, so maybe what customer to sell it to, if you need to hurry up and harvest it all, take advantage of this, and kind of know what you're getting into and help schedule your harvesting. And all this is, some of it works for certain crops, some of it doesn't. A lot of this doesn't apply for hay or forage crops. Some of it might. A lot of this applies to the Midwest, where they have thousands of acres of corn and wheat. Again, your area and crop depicts kind of what technology you can use. But like anything, it's advancing, and every year there's more and more and more, and eventually you can't really live without it. Kind of talked about some of this. Again, harvest identification. There's ways when you're baling in the field, it can put a little, like you see there, you can place your baler can place a tag on that bale, and basically it signs it like a barcode, like in a store. So when you're selling that, or say a lot of this hay goes export, if it's going over to China, then you can go scan it and know exactly, trace it back right to what farm and field it even came to. So traceability, especially with food safety, especially in the vegetable industry, with food safety issues, they track each leaf of spinach that comes off that field, and there's new technology that helps them track that back. So if they have a salmonella outbreak at Taco Bell, they can go see exactly where that issue possibly could have began, at least where it came from, and then do the investigation from there on. Some tracking, and then all the self-step accounting. Again, you can use all the technology or lack of in the world, but if you're not profitable, it's not really worth it. So all this is about being sustainable and using what you can to, if you're conserving resources, you're saving money right there, but it's also you got to maximize your yield and get the most you can out of there, and pay for this technology. It's not cheap, but of course it's not free. It's getting cheaper with time, but like anything, it has to pay. Again, soil sampling with GPS, you can, like on that quad or this gator, as you're driving through the field, it's pulling soil samples, and thanks to GPS technology, it's recording where that is. So now you can now create a map of your field showing the areas that might be deficient in certain nutrients. And then you can create prescriptions to go and amend those areas. Field scouting and crop consulting, which actually is a great field to get into, a lot of opportunities in it. Again, you know, being able to track all the data. When you're, like this gentleman down here is sweeping a field, it's a sweep net. We go out, when we have a potential pest problem, we go out in fields with these nets, and there's certain procedures to sweep, and then you go and count how many, say you're looking at alfalfa weevil. You go and sweep so many times, you go and dump them out, you count them. There's thresholds set. If you reached over, I think it's like 15, then now you need to know spray. If it's only 5, you just keep monitoring it. Maybe you're going to cut it. Maybe the weather's going to change. You might not have to spray. If there's beneficial insects, there's a lot of ladybugs. You might want to hold off on using any chemicals. So, and then being able to record these areas and looking back at your past history helps create these integrated pest management plans to where you can help manage your pests. You know, the best way you can with, you know, chemicals being your last resort. Let's see, a new thing that's coming about now is aerial imagery. With, you know, the talk of drones and all this. We're starting to use drones in agriculture, flying over fields and taking these pictures, whether it's just a normal picture like this one, you can see patterns, or infrared imagery, which will pick up certain things like temperature, if the crop's deficient in nitrogen, or water stress. And they can go and treat these. If they see a certain virus, like tomatoes, they'll do this. Tomatoes are real susceptible to certain viruses. And it'll start at one end of the field, and with the wind, it'll just carry its way. You can see patterns working through the field. So if they take these pictures, they might see it starting on this edge. Now they know to go in and treat and stop it before it spreads and wipes out their entire stem. Again, there's just some imagery, like that's a probably infrared one there as well. So, you know, I don't know what these colors mean, but it might be, you know, maybe a water stress here or something. But that's a new thing that's coming out. Let's see, as far as, I guess, and again, it's just, the technology goes on and on and on. And when you're planting, you can use technology with your planters that, as you're planting along, it'll tell you if, say one of your rows, the seed stops dropping. So rather than having a skip in your field, you can fix that right there. If you have these prescription maps that you've created, you might want to increase your seed population in a bad spot of soil or decrease in other ways. So as you're planting along, the GPS knows where you are, and it could either increase or change your seed seed rate. In the Midwest, they're even setting this up to where if you're in a salty spot of the field, it'll even switch seeds and plant a different variety of corn right in that section and go to a different one. I mean, it's getting to be really high tech. And then again, yield maps when you're harvesting, recording the data. And then you can compare this data year to year and see if you're actually gaining ground, if you're going ahead, going backwards, and if it's staying. And then another new thing, which, you know, with water, scarce resource being more important, is variable rate irrigation. As I mentioned, you can do your soil mapping and have a map of your field based on the soil type. If you have sandy soil or clay soil that might hold more water, you can go and create these prescriptions. Let me see. Okay, so like this picture on the left, the red would be a sandy area. You know, blue would be a heavy clay, and then green's kind of your average clay or silty loam soil. So, you know, theoretically, you want the sandy spot would need a little bit more water. Here's another good picture. And then you can cut back in the real heavy clay zones here. So basically, you can then, there's software that'll then correlate that to your irrigation patterns. So you can see in the red areas now, like this for center pivot, it'll tell your pivot, hey, we need to slow down here, it needs a little more water. We can speed up here, it has clay. There's ways, here this is by sector, so you can see it's got to be pie-shaped. So here it works out great because your sandy area is kind of a pie-shaped area, but a lot of times it's not like this field, it's not pie-shaped, so you might be over or under applying here. So to take it a step further, they have it by zone, to where on your pivot, each sprinkler can turn on and off based on where it is in the field. So it's really neat stuff. Of course, it all costs money. You know, I don't have that technology yet, but you know, eventually it's something. Every drop of water is going to count. Kind of talked about variable rate seeding. So with this technology, you can basically do variable rate anything, whether it's seeding, irrigating, fertilizing, harvesting. And meaning variable, meaning as you're going across the field, instead of always spraying the same amount, always harvesting the same amount, you can adjust that as you're moving along. There's mapping, and there's just a bunch of pivots and soil maps. This is one of the pieces of equipment that you can tow across the field, and it sends electric waves down, and it'll tell you your soil texture of your field if you want to map your soil type of your field. Again, data helps promote better farm decisions as long as it can be easily accessed, through one spot and put to good use. Sure, I could say I use all of these, it might sound great, but unless you can make it actually work for you and pencil out, it's kind of worthless. So, as with all technology, it can be a challenge, and there's huge learning curves, but there's also a lot of opportunity there, and the benefits are endless, and it's only going to continue to increase. So. Just with this aside, there's so many great opportunities in agriculture with the technology. They need a lot of big, large ranches. They'll hire specialists just to do their precision ag management, handle all their technology that's so advanced. And they'll be consultants. That's all they do is go around and consult farms on this. So there's lots of opportunities. Again, just smartphones nowadays to go check the weather, being able to email, all that stuff just makes everything a little bit more easier and right at your fingertips. Really quick, I got a few other pictures. This is kind of a whole nother slide. Real quick, just want to throw some pictures on. Now GPS, another side of it is GPS guidance, where tractors basically drive themselves. You still have to have an operator there, but you set your coordinates, and that tractor will drive exactly where you tell it. Whether it's a straight line, if it's in a pivot, it'll drive a perfect circle. And what that can help you do is your overlaps. When you're applying nitrogen fertilizer, you're driving by hand. When you make your next pass, you can't exactly get that fertilizer right on the edge of your last pass. It's just like driving. If you came up, I'm trying to think how to put this in a word you guys can understand, but if you came back up your next pass,
what about
board on here?
I just thought about, Chad, what about when you're mowing the lawn?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
mowing
you
the
have
lawn.
to.
There you go.
We don't have
when you come
lawns.
back the next time, sometimes, if you guys mow your lawn, sometimes that lawnmower might overlap 2 inches where you cut. Sometimes you might miss a spot, and you miss a spot in the lawn. Well, this GPS, you can be right on the edge. So now you're not, if you're applying fertilizer and you were overlapping, 1 foot, at the end of the day, 1 foot, if you're driving, miles, that starts adding up. You're wasting your resources. If you're not overlapping enough, you're going to have a gap that didn't get fertilizer. And same goes for pesticides, water, and that also costs more fuel. If you're overlapping, you got to make a few more passes at the end of the day. It costs extra fuel, extra labor, extra time. So the GPS is really neat technology, and you have nice, pretty straight roads now that everyone can admire. You don't have to have the skill of just driving a perfectly straight line. And then we won't get into how it works with the satellites and everything. There's different, there's subscriptions, different accuracies, and it gets pretty in depth as you can see. But I do want to show a few pictures. Let's see here. Oh, this kind of shows you what's unexpected. This combine here has GPS on it, so it's driving a perfectly straight road, just the right overlap. And you can see it's basically generating a map as it's driving through the field. So say the green spots, you got excellent wheat yield there. The yellow is probably a little poor, and that's basically what you're doing now as you're driving through the field with this technology. Here's the same thing. Here's that's a sprayer there. He's coming through the field. So say the green area, those nozzles that end up right there might apply a little bit more fertilizer or a little bit more if it's a pesticide. And then, here's a swath or windrower you see tomorrow cutting some hay, perfectly nice straight rows. You can minimize your overlap. Although I'm sure Paul can drive just as straight roads as that, though. Okay, and real quick, I'll show you, actually on the internet, real time, some of my data. Here, these are my moisture probes for 5 different fields. We'll just go, we'll go look at this field right now. Well, actually, honestly enough. So the blue lines are actually each bar is a day, is 1 day. The blue lines is an irrigation event when we've added water. So you'll see it says 1.2 inches. So this day, our moisture sensor picked up 1.2 inches of water. The red here is a deficit. That's the plant using the water. So this day here, in the top right, if I put my mouse over this, in the top right corner right here, that tells me the data wherever I put my mouse. So we have a deficit. The crop used a ½ inch of water that day. So, essentially you want to add up these days that you've used water and then replenish that before it gets to a wilting point where the plant's suffering. Let me show you a different feel. It's a little bit more, one of these shows it really neat. It's this one. Okay, this one's kind of good. So basically, here, we added 1.3 inches. Here we used up an inch, or ½ an inch. We used 0.6 inches. So we used a little over an inch, and then here we came back and applied a little over an inch. We did the same thing, and it just goes back and forth. So we can maintain that level there. Right here, you see a few days without it. This is where we cut. We were going to harvest the crop. So you can see that last bar of a bunch of use, the crop was still standing there. The next day we cut it. So now you only have a crop that's 2 inches tall. It's not going to use a lot of water. That's why the water use that day is only, we've got 0.1 inches. So then you can see this crop's starting to grow back. It starts to increase. We picked up the bales. We gave it a good shot of water. And now it's kind of getting back to normal. This next graph here is each sensor. I have a sensor placed at 4 inches, 8 inches, 12 inches, 20 inches, 36 inches, and even 48. Alfalfa roots, generally the profiler you're working with is, no more than 36 inches. Alfalfa root will go down 15 feet, but it depends on your soil type. So I don't want to see any water going past 36 inches, and I know I'm over irrigating, then the water's going too deep and it's getting wasted. So like this line right here where my mouse is, that's my 20-inch sensor. When it's a flat line like this, there's no moisture. So you can see right here, it's starting to increase a little bit, which is good. I got a little bit of a bump up here at 36, so now I know I need to cut my water back a little bit next time. Each spike is an irrigation event. So you can see it spikes up when it gets water, then it goes down as the plant's using it. And this little wiggly line is actually root uptake. It's going up and down. It might be during the daytime, a hot period, a windy period. It's constantly changing. And this next graph is the sum of all of these sensors. So this is a good one to look at because it shows your whole profile there. And you can set, like this red line, just by getting data I've set, I know, hey, if it's getting down at that point, I'm in trouble. I'm getting past a wilting point to where the crop's going to suffer. I don't want to let it get down that far, and I need to reset my lines here. Then I also set a full line that I don't want it to go over because I'm overwatering. So then, we can look at this and basically see the sum of water and how, like my full line is set at 12.5 inches. This line needs to be moved up. Right now, my sum of all the water is 14 inches, so I'm 2 inches over, but this line should be up about 14, 15 inches. So if I know I have a deficit of 1 inch, we can go irrigate 1 inch. But of course, you still have to get out in the field. You still need a probe. You still got to go feel the soil. Go look at your crops. The winds. Look at the weather patterns. If you're having a hot spell come up, we're going to build up that soil profile without overwatering to prepare for that. Because once you're behind, it's hard to catch up, especially with pivots, because you only put so much water down at a time. And then you just, your average daily use will tell you data, ET, take notes, and all that kind of stuff. So, and here to help me get used to this, I actually work with a consultant. He's actually in the Midwest, but he'll come on and look at it. He'll make notes, and tell me, you're doing this. You can maybe delay a few days, but still, you got to know the area. You got to know your soils and know what you're kind of doing there. Any questions or anything so far? A lot of info.
That's really cool.
And then now here's how I control my pivots. This shows all 5 of them. This is just the front page. It shows all of them in one shot. If it's green, the pivot's on. If there's blue in the middle, there's water. When it's white like this, it's off. These fields here are on what's called a time of use program with Edison for my electricity. I get a discounted rate if I shut my pumps and pivots off during the peak electricity hours, which are between 1 and 5, because that's when they need, everyone has their air conditioning on, it's hot, lights are on. That's when they're trying to conserve electricity. So these particular fields, my wells put out enough water that I can afford to be shut down, a few hours every day. Like these fields 1 and 2, my pumps put out just enough water to where I got to keep it going 24/7. I can't afford to shut it off, so I pay a higher rate, but it's all I can do to keep the full pivot going. But that's why these are sitting idle right now. Then when you click on the field, it actually shows there's a Google Earth image of the field. That's my shop right there. Right here's where the pivot is. You can see the arrows is rotating in this direction. Here 10% is the speed it's traveling right now. There's my pressure. I have 7 psi. This is where there's alerts. If I can say, hey, if the pressure drops below 4, send me a note. It means we got a water problem. Something either broke, the well's off, something happened. Let's see. There's 348 degrees. That's where the pivot's sitting. In relation to a circle. You got 0 degrees, 90, 180, 360 degrees. So that's where it is in the circle. So we can go on and even see where it is. We have the current cycle. It says how many days until it's going to finish, till it's going to do a full revolution. Let's see. It tells me how many acre inches I'm applying. We're putting down 1.57 inches of water right now. Let's see. And basically, then down below here is where I can start and stop it. I can tell it to turn on at this time, turn off at this angle. And I can generate reports. I can go back and see how many acre feet of water we use in a certain section, the whole year, the whole month, the whole day. The pump was on, the pump was off, and it just, again, it goes on and on and on of data. It's just what's of use to you.
So you said the green was what now?
Well, this is a little different here. The green in the variable rate
Top
one,
one?
green. Yeah. Green means the pivot's on and running. So if it were off, it would be either red or completely white if the power's completely off. If there's a problem, it'll turn red.
So in other words, it's only watering in the center right now.
No. This is just it's just a graphic. It's just telling me that the pivot's running. It has nothing to do with the water where it's operating right now. It's just telling me the pivot's on. It's just the way it's the program's designed. So just if your circle's green, it's on, and just the blues means you got water running. So doesn't mean water's just where that circle is. The whole field's getting water.
So it's just telling you that
It's just telling me it's on with water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The source of power to run the pivot.
It's all electricity, so it's all run on electricity. It has electric motors. You'll see tomorrow with Paul. Each tower. I don't have any pictures on here, but the center pivot has wheels on it. Every 150 or so feet, tires with gearboxes, and electric motor that moves. So as it's irrigating, it's moving. If you want to apply more water, you make it go slower. If you want to apply less water, you speed it up. So you can adjust the speed of this pivot's rotating.
And is any of this power, wind or solar?
No, this just comes off the grid from Southern California Edison. And it takes, a minute just to run the pumps alone, or 100 horsepower pumps. It takes quite a bit amount of energy to do that. And to do solar, I don't know how many acres of panels you need to do that. So,
Well, yeah, certainly more than what could fit on that rig or anything, right?
yeah, or even the core. Yeah, I wouldn't even know. But I mean, the pivot's 480 volts, so it's high voltage stuff. But it's efficient. By far, the pivot itself is efficient as far as running, right?
Yeah.
It's the pump that uses a lot of energy.
The pump takes the biggest,
And valves are actually adjusting for areas that need more water, less water?
I don't on these systems I don't, but they're out there to where each sprinkler you'll see in the field, each sprinkler, each drop will have a valve on it that can turn it off or on based on where it is in the field. I can set this up by sector, by pie shapes. I can tell, okay, this pie here, speed up a hair, this pie here, slow down. I can do that with this, but I can't control each sprinkler individually.
Gotcha.
But it's something, I'd love to do, and of course it costs money, but
But it is available.
That's still a pretty good thing.
it's still a new thing. It's still a new thing. I mean, There's probably none. I mean, pivots aren't extremely popular in California. There's definitely none here. I know there's some research back in the Midwest and the South where some universities have that technology, but it's a new thing. Yeah. All this is new stuff, really. I mean, as far as like using this, well, there's different setups, but I was the first. I had to become my own dealer just to put this on my systems. But all the pivot makers have this. It was just different brands. Since mine didn't have it, I used this to put it on, and the variable rate and all that. So, but it's all new technology, and of course, with time it gets better and cheaper, and eventually, and with water and environmental issues, it gets to the point to where you will have to do it eventually. Yeah.
Do you guys have like a backup plan in case, like, say the power goes out, and you can't rely on all these fancy apps and systems and
You mean as far
technology?
as getting
Like the old-fashioned
back,
way, maybe?
getting back up and going, or
Just in case.
well,
so you
the
don't
power,
miss
there's
your
no way of
prime.
operating pumping without power, so there's no way around that. I mean, usually General Edison's pretty decent. I mean, maybe you'll be out max 12 hours, 24 hours, just like your house, and they get the power going. But really, without them, there's not a whole. I mean, you could go and get a big diesel generator if you had to. A lot of these pumps used to be operated by diesel engines instead of electricity, but then with emissions issues, it opens up a whole other can of worms. What's sustainable, which is the electricity sustainable. So, but as far as that's an issue. Although if the power goes off, and that's the main thing about this, when the power goes off, which it does, especially out where we are, lightning storms or whatever it may be, it'll send a message. This is all the telemetry that sends the messages is runs off a solar panel. So if something goes wrong, it doesn't need power to tell me that. So that's the nice. It'll still tell me if something goes wrong, and the cell works if you don't have power. But to operate, it doesn't need electricity. My moisture meters have a solar panel on each probe, so I can still get data from that if power's off. But if you don't have power, you can't pump water though. So.
Commercial strips from horses.
Yeah, I mean, any questions? Yeah.
I have a quick question. Well, first of all, I like technology and everything, but and I see how it helps, how it can help a lot. But I was just wondering, as far as sustainability goes, would you say that it can affect future generations negatively if say they start relying and being dependable on all this advanced technology, on just pushing a button and having it do it for them and stuff, and like not knowing how to do it themselves?
Yeah, no, that's the thing with a living plant. You still have to be out in the field. You still have to walk out. I mean, this does not. It will never replace actually getting out, walking in your fields, and out checking things out.
Well, because
it's just a tool to help you make decisions better, and versus just going and I think it needs water today. We'll turn on this. Now I know. Okay, I think it needs this much water. But as far as completely remote, automated, you still need a human mind to go out there and make decisions.
Well, it seems like that's where like technology is going, to where all you have to do is push a button and it grows a plant for you, does everything for you and everything. And
not quite. I mean, it seems that way, but it's not quite. There's still a lot more to farming and growing crops than the technology side of it. I mean, because again, it comes down to Mother Nature. You can have everything set, a computer do this, but what if you get a thunderstorm this afternoon? What if you get 60-mile-an-hour winds? That changes your whole game plan.
they have a button for that too.
What's that?
They have a button for that too later in the future.
What, control the winds?
Yeah.
Now, when you control the weather, then that'll be a different story. But no, again, these are all just they're tools, and farming, you got to be out there in the field and observing things. Because I mean, you got to get out there and look at things and know what's going on, and that helps. You have to know. I mean, the more you know a ranch, the more experience you have on one particular field. I mean, even without this, you're going to get better every time, and you're going to know, hey, I know I got a problem area here. I know, insects come in from this side, and there's only so much, a computer can really do.
Well, how about
But
for driving the tractor too?
Driving the
Like,
tractor? No,
where it
I'm
says
sure.
drive-
No, I'm sure
People might
someday
forget how to
those will
drive a
be-
tractor.
They already have them out now. Oh, there's a neat video. This company, they have them out that are completely manless tractors, but because of liability and all that, they're not released yet, because then it comes up the unmanned tractor. What if there's a glitch and it just takes off through town? I mean, it opens up another can of worms. But I guarantee, actually sooner than later there'll be manless tractors, definitely. But again, the tractors are just doing the work you tell it to. As far as growing the plant, making the decisions, that still has to come from a person. But you might now send a tractor and say, okay, hey, tractor 1, 2, 3, you go out and cut this field or go disc this field. But as far as, you still got to get out and kick the ground, feel it, and look at the plant, know what's going on. And you'll see, yeah, it just comes with experience. But it helps you be more efficient, and like this is GPS guidance with the overlap. I mean, that right there, it's saving resources and being more sustainable. But as far as completely automated farming, I mean, stuff in a greenhouse is getting that way. That's a whole other ball game as far as greenhouse, hydroponics, and all that goes, which will be more of. But out in the field, open farming, you still got to get out there. No matter what, you're gonna have to get out there and take the. Well, I mean, 100 years, who knows? But again, that's where the breeding technology and just the technology with different chemicals and modes of action and beneficial insects, just the technology and the research side, that's a whole other thing, and really neat and promising. There are really neat advancements as far as sustainability and growing more with less acres. I mean, with just plant breeding alone, I mean, it's huge, and it's genetically modified and all that kind of stuff. And we're losing more and more prime farmland, whether it's water issues or just being built on. Like down where I'm in Chino, houses are growing up like crazy. It's some of the best farmland around, but it's all because of the weather, and everyone wants to live there. So that's a big issue you have to figure out, is where we're going to grow our food in the future. And that's one thing where genetically modified could benefit. They're working on plants now, corn that can grow, with a few inches of water out in the middle of the Sahara Desert. But and we got to be able to grow more with less to feed the population growing. We got to grow more with less and be able to grow more on less arable, good farmland and quality water too. I mean, salt water, all that's an issue. So we're seeing it now already, and it is scary, and that's where technology's got to step up, really, and step in. I mean, every year alfalfa yields, corn yields, they're going up, and all between different chemicals, management methods that we learn, seed and research and all that kind of stuff. They're getting. I mean, it's not like we've been same yields we were 20 years ago. They're consistently even cows. I mean, every year the pounds per milk or gallons per milk a cow produce keeps increasing. Which you would think, man, it's an animal, isn't it going to be maxed out? But no, we learn more and more about the nutrition and how to feed them, how to take care of them, manage them, and all that. It just goes with any crop living creature.
And Chad, you touched on a real sensitive subject. Neville.
Yeah, I'm here.
Neville.
I'm being a bad student. I'm sitting in the back.
In my presentation, I mentioned to you this was an alfalfa field where we are sitting right here. This is a perfect example of conversion of prime farmland. Why we have a classroom down here on prime farmland, when we really could have probably put more classrooms up on the top where it wasn't quite. And along Apple Valley Road was all mapped as prime farmland. And that's something that environmental science is really need to look at hard. How do you get it back? If you think when we take out the desert, ecosystem, which we don't like to do because it's one of the most sensitive systems we put a field in, we can get it back, but it'll take a long time. But if we decided, gee, we got to have more farmland, how will we get this back? We've got pavement, we've got buildings, we've got concrete. So it's something that is a real problem. If you really think long ways down the road, it's a large problem.
And on top of that, certain crops grow in certain environments. You don't see strawberries growing up here, all your vegetables. So that's only certain things can be grown in this environment. That's why all our food, California alone supplies, 80-90% of the nation's fruits and vegetables. All up in the Salinas Valley or the low deserts at different times of the year, and they can follow with the weather. So without that, you can't start, if you had more water up here, start growing, your lettuce and broccoli. It won't work. Traditional breeding, might get us there someday, and then more greenhouses and who knows? But that's the other thing. I mean, just losing farmland alone is bad enough, but certain crops just can't be grown elsewhere, period, right now. So,
What would be a term for the principle that Paul was just talking about? What principle is that? How's that normally talked about in sustainability lingo?
Interdependence.
Say that again?
Interdependence.
Interdependence, yeah, sure, it could be. But there's a precautionary principle, right? We need to try to think downstream a little bit, think about whether that land use is really the appropriate one and what the long-term consequences are, right? So in farming, in ag, right now, we are talking a lot about putting renewable energy facilities on used agricultural land, right? And so particular Antelope Valley is dealing with this. They have a real water problem over there, and they don't have an adjudicated basin that we're also going to talk about tomorrow and how that works. And so they're really struggling. So a lot of land was converted to agriculture, and then because of water, it had to pull back, or economic reasons had to pull back. Well, there's a lot now when you pull back and it doesn't have the natural vegetation, it can actually turn to desert, and it can be called desertification. So we need to either put it back in ag or use it or try to restore it to a natural habitat. You guys, last field trip, you saw how tough it is to restore anything to its natural thing. You saw when we went up to Forest Service and at Juniper Flats. So we have to think ahead on all of this land use, whether it's for housing, whatever it is. We talked, BVWRA was here, Victor Valley Wastewater Reclamation Authority, right? About recycling water. We're taking good water and we're spraying it on our landscape. That's potable water. That water that people can drink, we're spraying. And we're not prepared to think about recycled water, right? Whether it's from waste or from something else. So there's always these balances, these trade-offs that have to happen, and we need to try to use the precautionary principle. The people we're working on, our main conversation will be renewable energy. How do we think ahead and think, is this, by tearing up desert, is this really the appropriate place to put renewable energy, fresh desert, or would it be good to put it on ag land and then require them to plant grass or something underneath it? That's something we've talked about at the RCD quite a bit, is they would be doing the renewable energy thing, and they would have to plant maybe some native grass seed. These poor guys would have to figure out how to farm that, which would be the story. But if we had enough incentives, we could, and make it economically viable, it could happen. Right? So there's these very complex conversations that have to go on. So thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, and mention the trade-off. One kind of unique thing down in Chino, there's houses and development coming up left and right, but one thing that brings is more people flushing toilets. Now there's all this recycled water available. So a lot of a good chunk of my land down there, I get recycled water because I'm right next door to a neighborhood, and the facilities and infrastructure's there. So I irrigate with recycled water on about 80% of my land down there in Chino. So that's, that's be sustainable, but the same thing, I know in 3, 5, 10 years, there's gonna be houses on the land I'm farming now. It's just inevitable. It's a matter of time, but it's kind of a unique kind of trade-off there.
Right.
Are you leasing that land? Do you
Yeah.
own it? Okay.
Yeah. So, and then one real quick, I forgot to show you guys on that same control as my pivot. Here's my weather station up there. This is all real-time information. It's like 99 degrees. It's got the wind direction, wind speed. It's 13 miles an hour, and gust 36 humidity, which is a lot for right now. I think there's probably some thunderheads out there. Of course, no rain year to date, but we have had about 1/2 inch of rain year to date. With some thunderstorms earlier in the season. This is in Barstow, yeah. Newberry Spring just outside. So if we did get rain, we know how much, and we could potentially adjust our irrigation for that. But yeah. Any other questions on farming side or anything?
It definitely will be a Tom at the end of the session to do some question and answer too. So.
Yeah, and getting out, once Paul takes you out to getting out in the field, hopefully make all this click too, especially if you haven't seen it before. I mean, getting out there, that's the best way to learn, you know, learn by doing it, getting out there and doing it.
It's not no trouble tomorrow, Tim will be there too.
Oh, there you go. No, Tim's gonna mentor me and, you know, kind of schools. Yeah, no, and there's lots of opportunities in agriculture right now too. Tons of them. So definitely a neat, exciting field to get into, and you know, options are endless. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, we forgot something. We need to give a double clap for these two.
Yeah.